Jacques, thank you so much for being here, for being on stage. It's lovely to be here in this wonderful auditorium. Goldman Sachs is an amazing bank. Lovely to be here. We love BNP Paribas, but it's lovely to be hosted in such a wonderful setting. Jacques, if I were to summarize what you've been doing over the many years, it probably would fill the whole 20 minutes we have today. I'm going to try to do it, and it's a very complicated exercise, in 1.5 minutes. You are ingénieur du corps des mines. I mean, if I were to find any analogy here, it's a wonderful combination of it's the French MIT and a little bit of West Point. You've started actually in the French administration, and actually in 1987 and 1988, you were in the cabinet of the Prime Minister. I think at the time it was Jacques Chirac. And I think in 1988, that was your time to kind of go a different path, and you enter the industry. And the industry with Saint-Gobain Group, obviously well-known company, amazingly successful company, and you not only managed and led affiliates and subsidiaries, but you did it maybe not around the world, but in different countries, obviously France, I'm assuming, but Brazil, Germany, and in the US. That might have been your first connection, I know, living permanently in the US, and I know how present this country is and has been in your trajectory. Then Jacques became the president of probably the most iconic division of Saint-Gobain, the glass and high-performance material activities, and you ended up being the deputy CEO of Compagnie de Saint-Gobain. I think it was until 2008. Because I'm mentioning this because that was Jacques entering into, I would say, the CEO galaxy or ecosystem. Subsequently, I'm assuming the Valeo Group, kind of impressed by everything you had done at the time, approached you and you became the CEO of Valeo, and I think it was in March 2009. And you actually acted as chairman and CEO of Valeo. Would love to hear some stories, hear anecdotes, so amazing, until January 2021. And the last year, edit my comments please, it's such an amazing, diverse trajectory. You, in 2022, you were the chairman of Valeo. And this is Jacques entering into the chairman ecosystem, I guess. And in 2022, you became the chairman of the board of Orange, the French Verizon, if I may say. It's an amazing company as well. I would not be complete if I were not to mention, and we'll get there, that you recently took the position of chairman of the French-American Foundation. I think that's a big theme for this transatlantic leadership forum. And you will understand why I'm a bit intimidated, because in the meantime, Jacques is a board member of BNP Paribas, and part of my career is at stake here in this conversation, and wish me good luck. Jacques, tell us about this amazing, diverse trajectory from French ministers to leading some of the French-based, but global companies around the world.
I would say only one word is I've been lucky. I've been lucky to be asked for very big challenges. Maybe the first challenge was to accept to go to Brazil when I joined Saint-Gobain. It was a kind of a triple salto, going in a new business industry, in a new country, which I had to learn the language, Brazil, and a new position as a CEO of a company, a small company, at a time where there was hyperinflation. This was the worst time in the 1990 was 2% a day. And when you learn managing a company with 2% inflation a day, you very quickly understand what cash means. And without saying any secret, you have some company in the Saint-Gobain group that were managing their market share. I've been criticized by my boss that was in Paris saying, "You are losing market share." I say, "Yeah, but my cash is increasing." I said, it struck you, you have to increase your market share. I said, just write it. I never received it in writing, so I carry on doing what I thought was important, is managing the company with the cash. Then I had a choice between, at that time already, going to the US or to Germany. I've chosen the most difficult, which was Germany. It was in '91 when Germany was opening. And when I was asked to go to Germany, the profit of Germany, of the position of the glass business in Germany, was at the highest level. Then the country has opened to new territories. After the fall of the wall, there was Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, and so on, that was entering with very, very cheap products. So I really thought that the only way to protect the business in Germany was to be the one installing capacity in all those countries and negotiating with the unions in Germany, saying them that we had to close some factories in Germany and opening some in the surrounding countries to protect the heart of the business, but not an easy task. That was the second one. And maybe the third one is when I had accepted to join, I wanted to be the number one. I was not chosen to be number one in Saint-Gobain, so I had to go somewhere else. And I've been very at the same time asked to join Valeo as a CEO. And that was very lucky because the company was really at the edge of being bankrupt. And we had to change at the same time the organization, the strategy, and the way we're looking at the business with activist investor in our share. And after a few months, it was clear to me that we had to invest a lot in R&D. We had some pearls in terms of new products, but we were totally underestimated. We had to change the organization, and we had to invest in China. China has become the first country in automotive and in lots of businesses in China. So after a few months, maybe 3 months, I presented kind of a piece of paper, the priority. That means saving money with a new organization could save probably $500 million, and investing that $500 million into increasing R&D and investing much more in China and emerging countries. And I will only say the reaction of the board member that was coming from the activist fund is, that's fine, that's exactly what we want. You have to save the $500 million. I really don't understand why you should invest in R&D and why you should invest in new territories and China.
Then you convinced this activist investor?
I convinced all the board members except one. That representative of the activist fund. My pleasure is they probably entered Valeo at a price of 40 euro per share. The share has been divided by 3, so it would be. And they left when it was already around 25. For the pain they gave me during a few years, it's really the price they had to pay, losing a lot of money.
2 different industries, right? Going from glass to what Valeo was engaged into.
It's not such a change because in the business I was managing in Saint-Gobain, there was a part in the automotive industry that was quite big, in glass and in some of the high-performance material. So I knew all the customers. I knew the way the business is done. I knew most of the countries where the automotive business is. Without that, I think it would have been extremely difficult. But knowing the customers, during the very first month, I looked at from inside, and I went to see all the people I knew in the industry from the customers. And the image of Valeo into the customer basis, which is the most important, as a matter of fact. Nothing is more important than the customers and the people in the organization. I would say if there are some shareholders here, I don't neglect the shareholders. But if you don't have the right customers and the right people, you don't can reward your shareholders. And I had a poor image, or a wrong image, not a poor image, a wrong image of Valeo from the outside. There was an iconic CEO of Valeo in the end of the 90s. His name was Noël Goutard. Probably nobody knows him in the room. He was really the one that built Valeo and the Valeo it is today. But his successor wanted to be a Noël Goutard without being a Noël Goutard. So he didn't change the organization. He didn't invest enough in the R&D. And the image I had from outside was it's a very well-run company with very poor products. which is very difficult to, because like I said, when I joined, we're losing 2 million a day, which is quite a lot of money. So if you had to really at the same time have a very well-run company and invest in the product, then it would have taken much more time. As a matter of fact, the company was very badly run. The organization had to change from a very fragmented organization and had to really make it, because the customers had concentration, we had to really reshape it, which I had already done 2 times in Saint-Gobain. It was not difficult to do, it only takes a few months. And when you're losing 2 million a day, you know, the unions are very quick to accept some change, and they accept it very, very quickly. I think we had designed the organization in 2 or 3 months, and after 6 months it was in place. So that was clear. So I thought it was very well run. It was not. And I thought the products were very poor, but there were some real, I call it pearls in the laboratories, which allowed us very quickly to become #1 in the world in most of our businesses.
You mentioned the unions, Jacques. Having had the privilege to get to know you better over the last few months, I've seen you as a big proponent of negotiation and collaboration versus confrontation. Did this help?
Maybe last week we had the gala dinner at the French-American Foundation in Paris. And we invited Dara. So I don't say the family name. It's as complicated as mine, with the same 12 letters. Not the same letters, but 12 letters, very difficult to pronounce. And the reason why I decided to invite him, I knew him from my time in Valeo and his time already in Uber, is the fact that he's an Iranian that left Iran after the revolution in '79, his family. He was 9 years old. He came to France. And then his family moved to the US and then had a very successful career he had. And when he joined, I think it was in 1917, Uber. Uber was a very aggressive company. I think you don't create such a new company without being quite aggressive and with convictions. But he had a lot of his own employees, or the cities were working in the states against the organization. And one of the motto of Dara was from aggressivity to negotiation, from provocation to negotiation. And I think in a time when that was a kind of a motto of the gala last week, you say, we're in a world which is very much to confrontation. You need sometimes with confrontation, but very quickly you need to go from confrontation to negotiation. And I thought that was in a French-American Foundation where we need to go for diplomacy and friendship, which are not abstract words, which are, I think, very important words, how we connect people together. Even we need to dare, which is the title of the conference. It was a very good example of what you can achieve, having created an object which was already very well known and very developed, how you can improve the image, the acceptance of that new business model by negotiation. That was last Wednesday. The Friday before, so 4 days, 5 days before, I received a very aggressive letter from the Taxi Federation of wanted to say, it's a shame you are honoring a company like Uber, which is confrontation, which is destroying the salary, which are destroying their people against the rules and so on. You have to know that 3,000 taxi drivers in Paris belong to the Uber network now. And I didn't answer. I answered the letter because I thought it was very important to try to avoid having a few thousands of taxi drivers in front of the place where we had the gala dinner. But I answered a totally other topic. I said, you know, we're not honoring Uber. Mm-hmm. We're honoring a man that went and tried to change the strategy of Uber, going from confrontation to negotiation. Maybe it's not enough, but you can see the change in the strategy, in the philosophy, and in the way Uber is accepted. Yeah, if you take Uber X here in New York, what I'm doing since I arrived at the end of last week, it's fantastic. Uber X, you have lots of taxi drivers that belong to the network.
Yeah. And if I may, you honored a poster child of the transatlantic dimension as well, because, Iran, France, and in the US. French-American Foundation, you recently took over. You've been traveling the world. You know the US intimately. Can you share some views? A lot of things happening here, obviously, a lot of things happening in France. What is your view on US and France, which is another core topic of this amazing conference here?
Jean-Yves has forgotten something. He told me, present me as a citizen of the world, which I would contest. I don't think citizens of the world exist. I think you can be a citizen knowing the world, but I don't think you can be citizen of the world. And I said, one of the first words, I said I'm lucky. I was lucky enough when I was a kid, I was 15 years old. My parents didn't speak any word of English, but they wanted to know the world. And they took their 5 kids and went to the US. They thought that we, the kids, could translate it into English. I was the number 4, so I spoke some words of English, but my elder brother and elder sister spoke much better than I did. And that was my first experience in the US, where we went through all the US, from New York to Phoenix, to the Nevada, to Salt Lake City, to Los Angeles, San Francisco, and back to Chicago. And when I arrived in New York, I said to myself, I'm going to live here and I'm going to have a flat here. And
which you still do, by the way.
We lived in New York, and some of my kids, I don't know if one of my kids is here, they studied in New York, and they're still living halfway between New York and France, which I enjoy it a lot, that they still remain connected with the US. And then the year after, I went to Russia. So it was in 70, and we were probably one of the first private group of people visiting Russia without interest, and a real private. And we went to what today is Armenia, Georgia, Ukraine, and the US. And then lucky enough to make a training in Burma in 77, to visit China for the first time in 81, so few years after the Cultural Revolution. And since then, I always traveled a lot. And I think my experience is, unlike what we think, the culture is not really narrowing. I think each country has its own culture. I know Asia quite well. I know North America quite well. I know Brazil and South America quite well. Now I discover with Orange the African countries, which I really, except Morocco and Egypt, nearly don't know. And you see the real culture. You see today, I'll speak a few words on Africa. I had the image of one of the positive points in Africa was the birth rate and the fact it becomes a very big continent with 1.5 billion of people like India today. But as a matter of fact, it's a drama. Take Niger. There is nothing in Niger. In 1960, when Niger became independent, 5 million people. Today, 50 years later, 25 million. And probably in 2050, 50 million people. There's nothing in Niger. And that is a real problem. And therefore, knowing the countries, you start to really think what is the best. And coming back to your question, because I didn't forget your question, in the French-American relationship, there is a confrontation today between US and China, which I understand. Probably we have been too naive in the way that we have transferred a lot of our industry into China. It's true for the US, it's true for Europe. At the same time, we Europeans, we cannot ignore China. And sometimes you hear of, we have heard our president using a word which is, we need, as French and European, be equidistant. I think equidistant is probably too much. Equidistant means the same distance to the US and to China. I think it's too much. But I think that we need to be a bridge between the US and China. Some countries like Germany are very much involved in China. China is, for lots of businesses, when I was in the automotive business, it's 1/3 of the market worldwide. So you cannot ignore China. At the same time, you cannot ignore the fact that there is a confrontation between us, a European and French, and our closest ally. But we need to be a kind of a bridge and try to figure out how could be the negotiation inside that confrontation. It's clear that we need to be very close. We are very close to the US. Even though probably in the future, whatever the president is, there'll be a commercial war between, I'll take the word, a confrontation between the US and Europe. We see that with the IRA, which, because our energy costs in Europe are very high, our salary costs are very high. So today, for probably a few years, Europe is less competitive it should be. We need to improve, and I'm very confident that we'll improve it. But in the short term, there is a real advantage for lots of companies to invest in the US. And we see some big companies really thinking of not only stopping investing in Europe, but sometimes relocating a part of their investment. And as a banker, you know it.
As a bank, we've seen exactly.
And I think that is something which...
It's a concern?
It's a concern. Whatever happens, even if I'm not a world citizen because it doesn't exist, if I know the world
you made
well,
the point clear.
I'm French, I'm European, and I think that we need to fight for our home countries and make sure that we remain competitive in that world. And but you know, China is extremely competitive. When I was in Value, having the same equipment in Eastern Europe, not Western Europe where the personal costs are higher, in Eastern Europe and in China, the cost difference was around 25 to 30%. Because they are very good in terms of very good engineers. They train 1.4 million engineers a year. We train 10,000 in France and probably 30,000 in Europe. All the ecosystem is extremely competitive. And at the same time, if our American friends are very competitive, we need to make sure that our best companies, and we have fantastic companies in France and in Europe, not only remain competitive in worldwide, which is important, but in our home country. Well, and that's the reason why I always work for
so insightful. You know, Jacques, we have here in front of us, you know, an amazing array of entrepreneurs. You've been leading multi-billion dollar, euro revenue companies. Any messages for them? Any comments? Any guidance?
They are lucky because after I studied, I entered what was at that time probably one way is joining a big company, and I had, like I said, been all type of my career extremely lucky to have a fantastic job, but I really admire those ones that really go out of the traditional way and take the decision to create their own company. I wish I would have done it in the past. I didn't do it. There is a very big difference if you're an entrepreneur in a big company, which is possible. If you really focus on innovation, which is something that happens in big company, and Valeo has been the first patent company, patent products in France for the last 10 years. You have the cash flow as a company, so it's much more easy. When you are creating your own company, you start with a piece of paper with
blank page
and no cash flow. So you have to convince. When you are working in a big company, you have to convince your board, you have to convince your people, you have to convince your customers. So when you are starting your own business, you have to convince some finance and start to fuel the company with money. I'm not sure I would have done it. I wish I could. I say, yeah, if I had done it, it would have been fantastic. I'm not very sure. It's another type of talent. And frankly, all of you creating your own business, I really admire you.
Jacques, it's been amazingly insightful. I could go on for a long time. Our time is up. It's fascinating to hear everything you shared from a capitaine d'industrie, really, which is who you are. Ladies and gentlemen, Jacques Aschenbroich.
Thank you.